Welcome to Writing and Influence, the podcast where words meet impact. I'm your host, Elaine Acker, and I believe that publishing, whether it's a book, a blog, or even a simple social post, has the power to amplify your influence and change lives. Your words have power. Let's start writing with purpose. Welcome, everybody. Today's guest is someone who has built a life and a business around helping people step into their purpose with courage and with clarity. Scott Ballard is a leadership coach, entrepreneur, and I would say an all-around encourager who's been helping everyone from CEOs to NFL players find breakthrough after breakthrough. Now, Scott was a kid with dyslexia, so once upon a time, he believed he was not capable of publishing a book, but he did it. And it's called The Biggest Disability is a Bad Attitude. Why they call me the confidence coach and how I can help you. So we'll touch on Scott's book a little bit later today. And along the way, Scott discovered his superpower, which is encouragement. And he's used that gift to help others see their own brilliance and move forward with confidence, whether they're growing a business or navigating big life decisions or stepping into leadership. And now I experienced this myself. When I was at Grow 2025, Scott was offering complimentary coaching sessions and I jumped in. I wasn't going to miss that. And that 1 hour was a game changer for me because it reminded me just how much I love teaching writing. And even though I've been focused on digital courses, I also realized that I wanted to offer live workshops again. So now that's back on my priority list, and that's because of Scott. So let's jump into today's conversation with the one and only Scott Ballard.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here and have this conversation. And we have so much to talk about because we haven't had a lot of conversations since the event because we've all been busy, but it is my pleasure, and I'm just excited to be on this today and to have this conversation. You're like, I feel like I've known you my whole life, and so this makes it really easy for me.
So, Scott, you've worked with a bunch of CEOs and athletes and entrepreneurs, so people from all walks of life. But in your experience, when people come to you, what is this one thing that they all have in common?
They all have in common this misunderstanding or not an awareness about the fear that has crept in, that has held them back from the thing that they're most passionate about or they most love to do or to be. This happens in a lot of different ways, but that's with everybody. There is that thing. And so I talk a lot about identifying fears, and then once we do that, then I talk about what's the truth or what is the thing that you're most passionate about? What's your vision? What's your mission? When we had this conversation, and it's really fascinating when you start to get rid of the fear or address it or become more courageous, then it shows up. You get clarity in this thing that you love and you want to do, and you're going to create such great value around. And so that's where a lot of the conversation starts is around that.
Yeah, and it's funny that you brought up fear right away because sometimes when I'm working with somebody on a book project, I end up guiding them through sort of getting beyond that fear factor because they may be fearful that they will fail, they'll start and they won't finish their book. Maybe fear of the visibility. All of a sudden, they're going to be in the spotlight, front and center, or just thinking that they're not enough. So I find that people probably like postponing their ideas and goals and things when you're coaching. I find that they have lots of reasons that they think they should postpone that book idea, even though I think their voice deserves to be heard and have to show them what kind of an impact they can have on others. So tell me more specifically, how are you helping them shift from that fear into courage to take the next steps?
Yeah, so this is what's fascinating doing this for 20 plus years is if I can get somebody to be honest with themselves about what the fear is, then I can ask them the question, what's the truth about that fear? but we find the truth by looking back in their life because they've been courageous and confident before. So I take them back to a
Mm.
point where they felt courageous in the past. And then we just bring it to the situation today or the project or
Yeah.
the business or whatever. So we borrow courage and confidence from the past, bring it to today, to this project, this idea. And then I have people, you know this, I have people stand up and say it out loud. I'm courageous, I'm confident, and this is why, and this is who I am, and this is why I can do it. So when they hear themselves and they touch to the back of their life, to the other part of their life, and they bring that forward, it all connects. And then they start taking action because they're like, oh, okay, well, that fear is not that big. And I can take a step and I can take another step. And all we're trying to do is to take baby steps every day. That's
Yeah.
really what we want to do. And it's like a muscle, it builds when we're courageous and we keep being courageous, then we get stronger in that and we can move forward and we can do things we never thought were possible,
Yeah.
like write a book.
Like write a book. You know, one of the things that I heard from a lot of people who attended Grow and had a chance to sit down with you, you were talking about people kind of standing up and borrowing that courage from past events. And I heard over and over again that those conversations really helped make some big shifts for people.
Yeah.
And it was funny because just like in our conversation, I think the thing that shifted for me was when when I blurted out all of a sudden, I was doing workshops. It was, where did that come from? That wasn't on the radar. And now here it is. But you had me stand up and start to, if you were leading a workshop, what would it look like? And because I've had experience teaching writing at the college level, hosting workshops, being a session breakout kind of thing, I have some experience with that. And I was able to kind of shift gears and shift into that mode. So I can say from my own experience, that was a really helpful way to get refocused on the things that I would really like to do.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to sell ourselves first on an idea or a concept or a business project that we want to. The first sell really needs to be to myself before I take it to the world or a customer or whatever. And part of standing up is being serious and committed to what you're saying. And when you do that out loud, you hear yourself, you're standing up, it sticks with people. And it's a beautiful way to create a transformation for somebody's life, whatever that may be. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of transformations, I've heard you talk about your own business. You kind of started at the kitchen table with $100 or so and no real industry experience, I suppose, in the coaching part itself. But you've experienced that same transformation that you're now giving to others. So, what were those mindset shifts and some of the practical steps that helped you go from this idea and into the impact, especially in those early days?
Yeah. Well, I went back to different other parts of my life because I had not been successful in business yet, but I was very successful in sports growing up. I was very successful in leading. Whenever there'd be a group of people or somebody would have a gathering or whatever, I would always end up being the leader. They're like, why is everybody like, you need to lead this thing? And I'm like, I'm not really. So I went back to different parts of my life where I had success or I made progress for myself. And I borrowed those pieces and I brought them forward. And what I found was there was more there than I realized. Just for example, in high school sports, I played on a team in a state where we were number one in the state my junior and senior year, and just how much I learned about what that meant and the impact and what my role was in that as a leader, as somebody that actually was a coach on the floor. So yeah, I just pulled from all those things. I'll tell you what, I pulled it from this idea of convincing my wife of we just celebrated 44 years to marry me and to follow my crazy dreams. And she's a brilliant woman. You've met her. I mean, she's the brains of everything that we've done. But I did look back at that and go, okay, I can be convincing if I need to be. I can be persuasive. And so, yeah, I looked at all of those things and I just kept bringing them forward and bringing them into this situation. And they fit. Most of them fit
Yeah.
really good. And it's a beautiful way to live. We get afraid when we solely focus on the future, the uncertainty of what's ahead of us. And the way you stop that is you look back at the certain things that have happened in your life,
Mm,
and then you bring them into the moment and you live into that and you make that day, that moment, that event, that book, you make that focus on that and not on the things we can't control that are in the future, right? Because
right.
nobody knows what tomorrow is going to be. So why would I let that so impact me? But man, people really let them, they get what I call stuckedness because they're so in the future, they get stuck in the present and they can't move because there's so much uncertainty out there. And I want to shake them and say, look back to the certain things that you've done in your life and bring them to today. And what's the certain thing we can bring into today? What can you know that you know that you know that you can do and be and how you can show up today? And I love that personally. When I can help somebody do that, you can just see it on their person. They relax. There's a calmness. Physically, you can see it happen. And
Yeah.
to me, that's why I have the best job in the world. When I get to see people have those moments, I'm like, wow, I get to do this. And, it's hard to find people nowadays that really feel like they get to do the work that they get to do. And
Yes.
I'm really fortunate there.
Well, and I can speak on behalf of a lot of people when I say we're really glad you do what you do every day and appreciate
Thank you.
the effects that you're having, the ripple effects that you're having in the world. So, kind of thinking about impact and words, which of course leads me right back to books. Talk about creating your book because you did this thing, you created this business, and then you wrote this book. Tell me about your book.
Boy, there's a lot I could say there, and I don't want to get super emotional, but being somebody, and you know this, you're a writer, you're all these things that I am not in the sense of, but going back to being severely dyslexic in the 1960s, the school system, God bless them, there was no training, they didn't know what was wrong with me. And so reading and writing has always been a really big challenge in my life. I've done a lot of things and I've been very fortunate to be able to do a lot of things and get a lot of help and have experts and in all of that. But writing a book for me, and you'll laugh at this because you're an author and you do all this kind of stuff, but I am like the last person on the planet that I would have ever believed I would have ever even wrote a book, let alone think about, let alone even entertain the thought for a second, because writing and reading was such an epic challenge. So I was in this group of people that were coaches, and we met quarterly. And we meet down in LA, and there's about 20 of us in the room. And we just talk about coaching and helping people and serving them and supporting them. And one time I was sitting there, and a guy was sitting across the table from me, and his name was Michael. He goes, "What are you doing for lunch?" And I go, "Well, I'm going to walk. I'm just going to get a good walk in to clear my mind." He goes, "Well, can I come with you?" And I go, "Great. Yeah, that's fine." So we start walking, and he said, "Well, tell me your story." He was genius. He's like you. He asked the right question. He said, "Tell me your story." And I go, "Really? You want to know my story?" And he goes, "Yeah." So I told him how hard it was. I was suicidal at 7 years of age. I tried to kill myself. My dear mom and grandmother, had to lobby against doctors and school systems to get help on all these things. I told him the whole story, and I told him I flunked out of 3 colleges, and I passed out of high school because I was so good in sports. They just kind of, in my small town, it was it's terrible to say, but they're like, "Yeah, you can go."
Friday
And
Night
I was
Lights,
never
we
in
can
trouble in
relate.
school. So I tell him the whole story, and he goes, "You need to write a book." I told him the story of, failing business 10 times, then finding a business and then going nationwide. And he goes, you need to write a book. People need to hear this. And I go, Michael, I'm severely dyslexic. Like, you can tell me to serve a 10-year prison sentence, and I would probably be more lean towards that than to write a book. And he goes, no. He goes, think of how many people you could help. Think of how many people you could inspire. Think of how many people you could give hope to. Think of how many people could take some of that and then put it into their life. And I didn't see him again for 3 months, and the same thing again. Then he started emailing. Then he would call me and he goes, you need to do this. And so I told Orlina, which you know her, and she goes, babe. And when she uses the babe thing, I like, okay, I'm in trouble. She goes, I talked to Michael, and I think you really need to do this. Like, this is important. And I said, oh, I just really don't think so. And she goes, do it for the other people. Do it for the people out in the world that have struggled the way you have. Do it for them. And that was the turning point for me. When she said, do it for them, then all of a sudden, kind of the walls came down. I reached out to Michael and I said, okay. I was like, I'll do it, but I don't know how to, like, whatever. And he goes, well, no, this is what I do. And so anyway, long story short, it was actually very cathartic. It was actually almost like therapy. It was actually a great gift to myself.
Yeah.
Now, I've gotten a lot of people that enjoyed it and taken a lot from it. But I think my takeaway to your question is sometimes we need to write the book for ourselves. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but that's kind of what it ended up being. And then it's had a life of its own after that, obviously. But I still today, people come up to me and they say, well, you're an author. And my first thought is, no, I never lead with it. Like when I give talks or at conferences, I never talk about being an author. I just did a group of 200 last Wednesday. I never mentioned it. But it's done more, not only for me, but it's done more for total strangers than I could have hoped or believed. And so at the end of my life, that's going to be something I'm going to look back and go, I am so thankful that Michael was persistent, that Orlina, she made me think about it differently.
Yeah.
And that really is one of the things in my adult life, one of my top 3 accomplishments. And it's not a bestseller. It's not any of I don't mean it in that sense, but I mean it in the sense of, if you would have told me in 5th grade that I would write a book, you can't believe how far-fetched of a dream that would be for a kid like me. And so it's an epic accomplishment in the sense of where I was and the journey I've been on. And it's also helped me to help other people when they're at that point and they're trying to go, oh, do I really want to commit to doing this? And I'm like, well, I can share my story. And here are the other things I never saw that have come out of that beautiful experience.
And I love that there's always this unlocking of future opportunities and things that you could never have foreseen otherwise.
Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Now, with your dyslexia, are you a reader or do you like audiobooks or are you a reader at all?
Now, this is, I'll give you the short version. Okay. I'm a bit of a readaholic because for so long I couldn't read. I mean, it was so hard. I would get a page done, I would just be kind of worn out mentally, my eyes because of the focus problem or dyslexia and all the things. So it's almost like I'm trying to compensate. I have 7 books sitting right here that I'm either reading or a part of, or I'm going to read. So bookstores are not good for me because I can spend a lot of time in a bookstore. It's that thing that you didn't think you could ever have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and for me, books are that. In fact, I have books I haven't read yet. I just like them, which I know for somebody that's always been able to read and write and do all that, it doesn't mean anything. But I'm like, this is kind of my thing, and so
Well, behind me is kind of my little reading nook, and I've
yeah.
got several of these books are things that I've collected that are signed. So I
Mhm.
have to tell you, I have to add your book to my collection, but you have to sign it for me.
You realize how crazy that sounds to me? You're an author, you're a writer, you're a professional writer. For you, that's why I'm saying that this is what the book is. It continues to stretch me and give back to me because I took the risk. I said yes when I was like, oh man, what have I just said yes to? I remember the
Yeah.
next day, I kind of broke out in a cold sweat. I was like, what did I just do? And it wasn't free.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a significant investment. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to cancel this. Because you go, and then I breathed and I calmed down, and Orlena talked to me. She goes, no, it may take longer. It may be need, you may need other, but we're committed. We're going to do this. And it got easier over the, I think, 4 or 5 months, 6 months of it. But the first month was really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean,
New
I
muscles.
new muscles. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a great
Well, I love,
life experience.
yeah, I love that you did it and that you've become a reader after having had that little piece missing for so long. So, and now that I know that you read all these books and you've really dug into it, is there any way you can narrow it down to the top two or three business books that have really
Oh,
influenced your journey?
well, I'll tell you one. In my last company that we took from our kitchen table to 42 states and the third largest seller of that product in the country, there was one book that was given to me by a client of ours, and it was The E Myth. Now,
Oh, yeah.
some people don't remember that. That's going way back. But that book took me from like took me from basically an elementary understanding of business to being able to look at something and go, I could scale this to a multi-million dollar operation just with that book alone. And what I loved about that book is he told, it was in a story form. It was an actual story of a business owner and that whole journey. And that really spoke to me because I had failed in 10 businesses in my 20s and early
Mm.
30s, 10 in a row. And then Orlena would say, what did you learn? What are you going to do next time? And then so when I got that book right at the beginning of the 11th business, the one that grew so much, it was kind of like a guidebook to me. And
Mm.
it really resonated with me because it was done in a story. It wasn't done in formulas or strategies so much, but it was like I felt like I knew the guy that owned the little cafe. I could smell the dough. I don't know. It just, for me, it just was like, wow, okay, I'm not crazy. I had this thought. Well, he's had that thought, and that was really super powerful for me in that sense. And then I joined a group, and some of you people know the strategic coach. So it was really big in the insurance industry. It's everywhere now. But back in the day, they had a lot of people in our industry join that. And Dan Sullivan is a brilliant thinker, still is today. Anything that he has written about a way of thinking about your thinking is one of his thoughts. And I have all of his books is so good because we realize that 80% of business results or not results happens in how we think about it. And so that's why a lot of the work I do is I ask people all the time, what are you thinking when that happened or when this is going on or when you think about that or you want to do a live seminar and you want to teach people in New York how to write like I think that's where you get the most progress or breakthroughs or transformation for people is if you can help them be aware of their thinking, and then help them go where the thinking is actually going to work for them instead of against them. And we don't realize if we don't think about our thinking, it immediately defaults to working against you. And so we have to then bring it forward and go, okay, how can I make this supercomputer work for me? And yeah, I love that. He's brilliant. And yeah, I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but I have a guy that's a client of mine that you'll be so proud of me. He has this great, it's called 40 Strategies. His name is Carl Cox. I got him to write a book because of my own book writing, and his book is done amazingly well. And his book is phenomenal in his insight of how to strategize and scale a business. Yeah, now I'm thinking of a bunch of people. I don't want to overwhelm people with.
I just love books, and it's because especially those people that are holding back, but there's somebody out there that's going to resonate with that individual and that personality more than anything else,
Yeah.
anybody else. And
Yeah.
when we get out of our own way and allow our knowledge and experience and lessons kind of come through, it can make all the difference in someone else's life. And I just think that's huge.
I think you're actually in the business of changing people's lives via the writers that you help write their books.
That feels really sweet.
And I don't know that there's anything more valuable. I have books that I've read 20 times.
Me too.
Because it so speaks to me. Now, they're not all business books. I'm talking about all books because I'm a all book reader. I'm not one of these business people that will only read a business book. I believe there's a full person. We need to serve all of that. But I think that is, in essence, the way I understand you and what you're doing and know your heart about it. I think that's what you're doing. You're changing the world by helping people write the book that changes the individual, which then creates the ripple effect that changes the whole world for better. And I applaud you. I applaud you for doing that at where you're at in life and realizing you can change the world by doing that this way. Because I saw your heart there in Galveston, and I'm like, we've got to get that heart out in there, and we've got to put people in front of her so they catch that. Right?
Wow. I thank you for that. And I love that vision for it. And that feels very true to where I am in terms of wanting to give back and wanting to encourage people and give them the confidence they need to write the book and unlock the next phase, the new opportunities, whatever comes next. That might be a good time to talk about one of the things I wanted to ask you about was joy, because you talk about finding joy in this journey. So for people who maybe they've been a leader for a long time, they've been in business for a long time, maybe they've had 10 failed businesses, what do you do to continue to find joy in this journey when you're so often just in the grind?
Yeah. So, the first obvious answer is gratitude, right? That's the first obvious way to think about that. But joy, it's interesting. Now it's going to be hard for me to condense what I want to say here. These joys really become a big thing in our practice in the last year or two. We can start with gratitude, but to attach yourself to joy is not an outward thing that happens to me. Joy is an inward decision I make moment by moment. So being happy most of the time happens to me, right? But being joyful is I woke up this morning, our granddaughter's staying with us. She's 3 years old. Being joyful is her running in with her 85-pound Labradoodle and jumping on the bed and going, "Good morning, Papa." That's a joy now that I can use all day long. No matter what comes at me, I can go back and embrace that joy. right? Because that's internal. That's a thing of love and kindness and mercy and grace and all those things. And so joy is a choice that I have to make. And most of the time, it's a decision between joy or fear or anxiety or stress or shame. So I have to be aware what I'm choosing, and I choose to choose joy. So when I was in Galveston with you and all of your people, what I kept saying to myself in between each one, and you'll love this line, like you'll understand because you are our biggest proponent of people coming to see me. In between each one, this is what I did. I'm gonna let you my secret out. I am embracing joy for this next person so I can be the best version of myself to serve them so that they may experience their own joy and transformation in this next hour. And I would say that out loud in the room by myself, in between you guys coming down and all that was going on, Orlena doing all that she was doing, so that I could get back. And so when you walked in the room or whoever it was, I could be present and I could come from that joy because I performed the highest. And performance maybe is a tough word, but I perform the best to serve people if I'm already in joy because then it's kind of effortless. People say, well, how did you do 32 in 2 days? Or what's all these? I was like, well, I was full of joy. I felt more joyful at the end than at the beginning. But I have to choose that because, stress will come in there, anxiousness, fear, doubt, shame, thoughts of imposter syndrome. What are you doing thinking you can coach these people? You don't even know that. Like, I have all that. And then I insert joy. And my joy was, gosh, I just had the greatest conversation with you. And so the next person walks in and it's like they don't have a chance because we had such a thing. And a lot of that was your openness, your willingness to walk in and do that, that it just creates its own momentum of joy. Mm. And by Friday night at Catherine's house, I was kind of like, I didn't really sleep that night. I mean, we stayed with them and I was like, it was hard to sleep. And then we spent the day, with Catherine and Ryan debriefing from the thing. And it was kind of like, I maybe slept 7 or 8 hours during that whole conference. And
wow.
But because joy was my constant choice, I had energy. I could be about you because I felt really good about where I was at.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought that was amazing.
It's
that you
powerful.
really could go through that many people and sustain that kind of energy and groundedness and attention for the next person that walked in.
Yes. So. And actually, it got easier as it went along, even through Friday night, and everybody that was there and all that was going on, it got easier. And then Saturday with me and Catherine and Ryan and Orlena, I mean, that was 5 hours. And that was just so, there was such a connection and there was so much wisdom that had been drawn. And there was so much to celebrate. And there was so much learning because we are in the state of joy. When your mind is in the state of joy, it's at its optimum performance. I know a lot about the brain because I have all kinds of weird brain stuff. So I've studied, I've gone to brain experts, all this stuff. Like, joy is like the ultimate endorphins for your brain. So when we can step into that, not acting, but we can just be there, it's amazing what can happen. And, like I told Catherine at the end of Saturday, and we left and we went up to Austin for a couple of days. But I said to her, I said, I'm just so grateful for the opportunity you have given us and for your people and the joy, this care. And I can always go back to that. If I have bad days, I have difficult things. I mean, I'm human just like every other. But I can instantly go to our conversation and go like, I can just see her with people in Manhattan at the hotel and she's doing her thing. And I would fly in and go, I just want to sit on the sidelines and just be amazed like, wow, she's flying. To me, I think that's what the world's missing is how we honor and respect and joyfully celebrate and see the brilliance in others and support it and be there for them. That's what changes everything. And you can't overdo that. I've never
Yeah.
I've tried to push the boundaries and I'm like, well, no, I'm still going. I'm not a young person. I mean, I was born in 59. So I, in a lot of ways, feel much younger today than I did 20 years ago. Not in the sense of years, but in the sense of when you're doing what I think you're made to do. I told somebody, I did a podcast the other day. I said, I haven't worked in 20 years. And the guy kind of looked at me because he didn't really know me. He was just interviewing me. And he was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And he kind of got a little, and I was like, no, let me explain. I get to do this.
Yeah.
And I get to be with people like you. So it's all good.
Wow. And I always love spending time with people like you. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening who are going to be wondering how they get to spend time with somebody like you. So, where should people find you?
Well, we do have a website, which I don't ever look at. I don't have any confidencecoach.org. And my contact information's on there. And my wife, which is the CEO of our company, not me. She's the boss, the owner. She orchestrates all of that. You know that. I mean,
Yes.
you saw that.
And she's
And
a
so
master.
yeah, I just go and serve and support and do where the door is open. We do a lot of our stuff initially, no obligation. We don't charge. We believe that serving people deeply at least 3 or 4 times is actually the best for them and for us to know whether or not there's something more long term that we want to do as a trusted advisor for them or a coach or whatever. And that's worked really well. And then we know them and they know us. And somebody said the other day, well, everybody's a coach. And I go, absolutely. And I said, I used to worry about that. And then what I've realized coaching so many people now is I'm the only one that coaches like I coach
You're
because I
correct.
have no program process. I have nothing because I never know what's going to happen. But I've become so bold now in my joy to say, in the next 15 minutes, your life is going to change. And it does over and over and over. And that's out of joy. That's out of courage. We're just so fortunate. We have partners like Catherine that have amazing people. We do a lot of these conferences now where we just go and serve the people that are at the conference. And then whatever happens, happens. But if you do that, and you know this, I mean, you're this person, all good stuff comes out of that. And we've been privileged. We've been able to work with some amazing people that I would have never thought would have wanted to or been excited to. And, Catherine's one of those people. When we met her, she had a tiny group. Literally, it was on life support. And then we met her and I got to start coaching her. And I was like, she's a world changer. This is global what you're doing. And, now I think there's 13 or 14 groups. There's a couple more that, she's doing her event in London next month. And I'm the least surprised person. I mean, I know who she is in here. Right. So,
And it's exciting to be part of that with other people
oh,
that
yeah.
have big dreams and are willing to
Yes,
take action to get there.
we need that. We need each other. And we've kind of fallen into we don't need each other. We desperately do more now than ever. In my life, the number one struggle for entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs, whatever you are, is loneliness.
Mm,
Because when we feel alone, fear has a much bigger impact on what we do or do not do. But when we're together, like at Grow 25, like the things that people have done out of that, people
yeah,
have sent me emails, videos, it's crazy because they were
yeah.
together and they felt courageous and they felt good and they collaborated, which we're doing.
Yes,
And you were
yes.
gracious enough to say, let's do this. And I love doing these things. It's
Well,
passion.
I love getting the word out. So I
Yes.
appreciate you being with me today.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's a blessing for me. It's a blessing. You were the biggest instigator to us overbooking the calendar to the point of we didn't know we were going to make it to the after party because people were landing up outside the door. I was like, we need to talk to Elaine about
I got
maybe a few more
excited. I wanted people to know about it.
They didn't. I think we
Sorry
didn't get to
about that.
everybody, but that's okay. There'll be a next time and we'll do that for sure.
Well, thank you, Scott. As we wrap up, do you have any parting words for us? Anything else you want to say?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything you want, everything we all want is on the other side of our fear. It really is. I know that sounds oversimple, but if you really think about that and step into that, you can create this life, this business. It's all there for you. It's all there for you.
Thank you again for being here. And I will look forward to more conversations very soon.
We'll do it. I'm going to hold you to that.